episode 2 of, I think we're going to call it Around Town or something like that. We're still working with the title, but it's Josh Hodges here, and I'm here with Ben Gunderson. Ben, introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing out here.
Hello, my name is Ben Gunderson. I am the Deputy Village Administrator for the Village of Camden. So what I predominantly focus on is that of economic development. So if it's blight or vacant buildings in town, or it's existing buildings, how can we facilitate more of a business atmosphere through expansions, through rehabbing or redeveloping buildings to create more of an atmosphere that's attractive for not only businesses but also living.
How long have you been doing this, Ben?
So I have been here for a year and 6 months. I've had some previous internships in the past that relate to zoning and planning, as well as economic development. So I've been in local government for about 3 years in total.
What made you want to get into local government?
So growing up, my dad was in local government, so my entire life he's been an economic developer. So what I do, but at a much bigger scale. I realized early on that from games on the phone, where you build a city, I think it's called Sim City, and then there's other ones. I played that pretty much early on in life, and as I got older, I became really close with what I would now consider my second dad. He's the city manager for the city of Hamilton, Ohio. I really established a love for local government, and that's when I started to hang around City Hall on my days off from school, and really I would watch city council meetings, every single week, even if I didn't even work at the city. So that kind of allowed me the opportunity to get exposure into the field, and I think that's really where a lot of that blossomed from.
All right. Yeah, and for a young guy, I've always admired your passion. I knew you had goals and you're dedicated to them, more so than most people I know. And but do you know what you're getting into? I guess you're probably figuring out. Getting into government at any kind, local or state, is going to be tough. People are going to. There's a lot of people just negative about what the government does, regardless of what they do. They're going to have things to say about it, and you're going to have thick skin. What drives you to go into a field like that? There's probably easier paths.
Yeah, so it's kind of unique. My first 2 internships, each time that I've had a job, I've gone to the council meeting and introduced myself to council as those are my bosses, whether it's directly or indirectly. And the first 2 times I've had a council member or a trustee literally tell me it's not too late to turn around. So, when people work from that mindset, or the community, you're always in the public eye, and that could be a good thing, which, when it comes to the impact that you can make a local government, that's great, because there is that public eye component where you're in the newspaper, you're doing a podcast like this to, showcase some of the greater things.
Yeah.
But there's also the side of government where, if it's something like, I'm going to rent you up because your grass is too long, or I'm going to tell you how you can use your property. There's those aspects that, although it's for a much greater purpose, and it's for the best interest of the city, sometimes it's hard to realize that, and sometimes it looks like we're telling you what to do, but in reality it's more of like a strategic way of promoting and facilitating growth within that city. So it's kind of a unique advantage, or a unique position in which there is a lot of negativity that's catered towards government, but also there's a lot of plus side that offers a much greater return than what might be reflected in the negative side of things.
It's funny you say that. A lot. When I wanted to become an attorney, a lot of older attorneys would tell me the same thing. It's not too late to do something else, but I've found that if you stay positive and push harder, some of the things that are difficult, because that's where it's coming from, the people who are telling you to turn around, because it's not easy. But if you push through, I think there's a reason it's hard, and it's worth it when you get through a difficult venture that you're pushing through, and it keeps it exciting as well. For me, someone's competitive. I know you're competitive. Is that part of it, like doing things people think that you can't do and proving them wrong a little bit, or proving yourself wrong?
Yeah, it's quite unique, because in government a lot of people are older, especially local government, but even on a federal side, state side, people are much older. So when you're the young buck coming in the room, even though I grow out my facial hair so I look older,
you're trying to look older.
I'm trying to look older, yeah. Might have some gray in there, but no, you're automatically kind of looked down upon. You're not as smart, or you're the young buck. And, that poses, some roadblocks, but also it allows you to get more exposure to things. So as I, started my career, I've always been in municipalities that are smaller, besides my last one, but you get exposed to a lot more. So if it's, writing a permit or you're doing a $17 million expansion, I've been able to have that exposure to all of it. So it's afforded me the opportunity where I do have that competitive side. So, when I'm told no, that's helped me because I don't believe in no. I believe in, okay, if it can't be done this way, then how can it be done? So there is a competitive side of me. And when, you're constantly told that, this is how we've done it for 20 plus years because, they've been in the field for that long, and maybe that's the right way to go about it. But also there's the competitive side of me, but also there's, this is maybe a better way to go about things. So it does give me a competitiveness. It does. And really, most importantly, it allows me to develop relationships because we don't always agree. And especially, going back to the younger side of me, when I, battle or I go head to head with someone that has, been in the field for 20 years, that is well regarded as someone that is a top city manager, economic developer, it oftentimes builds a better relationship, even though we might disagree. Ultimately, so long as we have the same end goal, and we accomplish that builds a better relationship, at least in my experience.
And how old are you again, Ben? 22, 23?
Just turned 23.
23. So, you're a young man, and, big cities are not going to let you run their economic development at this age. They're not going to let anyone, I wouldn't think, Cincinnati or Dayton. You're going to get more experience. Starting out in a small town, that's where most people are going to start, I would think, unless they're going to if you start in a big city, you're going to be in a much lesser role. You're not going to be running the economic development. So what about small towns? What do small towns face that maybe bigger cities do not, as far as challenges and opportunities? So
challenges, anyone's going to make this argument that a lack of funding, whether you're big or small, if you're a big city, it's just a bigger number. Mm-hmm. But we don't have as many resources. We don't have the ability. So like, if you look at other bigger cities, they own some of their, the water and wastewater, some of these utilities that allow them to, really capitalize on those to make money. Some of the smaller towns don't own anything. So they have property tax and maybe income tax. So unless you have those property values or that income to help support or to be able to capitalize on that tax, you're really struggling to get funding. So that is a concern or a problem that you run into, as well as just it's a smaller place. So when you do make decisions, it's not like 60,000 people. It's 1,000 people. So if you make a big decision and it affects 1,000 people, they're gonna know. People are more involved because it is smaller.
Word gets around.
Yeah. So that's another problem that you run into is ensuring that the right information is out there. Especially with social media these days, information can be twisted. It could be, there could be a big miscommunication on certain items. So ensuring that the right communication is out there through the vehicles, social media vehicles, that's important for us. But opportunities, when we can land a huge project, that really makes a huge difference for the community in terms of, if we bring 50 jobs to a small town that's less than 2,000 people, that's a huge impact for something that's that small compared to someone that's bigger. So it's more of a smaller world that allows for relationships, or it feels like a bigger impact is made.
I'm not in economic development, never worked in city government or anything like that. But when I go to small towns, usually to go to court or visit a client, I always, the first time I came to Camden was about 2.5 years ago. Even though I've lived only about a half hour away, I've never really came to the downtown strip here that I can remember until about 2.5 years ago. And the first time I drove down the little strip, there were some blighted buildings and some that looked abandoned. But to me, I'm kind of a dreamer. I'm like, man, this thing there's some potential here. Some people will tell you, like, no, they need torn down, and I knew when I first brought you up here, you're like, yeah, there's potential here, and I love that about people when they see what can be instead of, the negatives. Right. But some people see the negatives, always. So you're going to be and I'm sure you have been, I don't know for a fact, but some of these older buildings, there's going to be people who want to save them and repurpose them, even if they don't have an idea or the money to do it, but they want that no matter what. There's usually another contingency in towns that they just want things torn down, so they don't have to look at an old building. How do you handle both those contingencies of people? Because both have their points sometimes.
I would say that that's always something that is in discussion. Historically speaking, Camden has been very fortunate with having the small mom and pop stores, whether it's a barber shop or a place to buy your deli or a bakery. As you get to the early to mid, about 2008 to 2012, a lot of our buildings were purchased and really our core downtown buildings were then turned into multifamily. So that really did not afford us the opportunity to bring in those businesses, the much needed businesses to attract those people. So as these buildings, if the maintenance is not upkept, then they become blighted and, oftentimes vacant. So that's where we're at now is we have a bunch of buildings in our downtown, our core, our main business corridor, that are either multifamily or that are vacant and blighted. So, when we look at pictures in the past and you have these beautiful buildings, at least at one time, with the architecture, it's, you wish you could replicate that, but sometimes they're just far too gone. So what we have elected to do is we're part of an organization now, it's called Heritage Ohio, that really focuses on bringing businesses and people to the downtown. So the downtown is really the heart of a municipality. That's where, people, the greater that the downtown is, the more attractive that place is to live, just because that's usually where the businesses are. So for a small city like us, we need those small mom and pop shops. So we need the attorney that's just one or two people, the barber shop, the bakery. We're not going to attract those big businesses, but certainly not big boxes typically. So we need to be able to find that balance where it's like, okay, if we know this building is gone, if it's, really falling apart, doesn't make sense to tear that down and then replace it with something that would aesthetically fit in, with a brick that might match the building next to it. Certainly it's not going to be the same, but there are ways where you can try to match that character that allow us to sort of keep that history, but also continue to improve and build upon what we have currently. Because, once it's gone, you can never replace it, but we can still do things to try to keep that character in the downtown.
I think that's a good transition. And let's talk about some of the projects and some of the things that are happening in Camden positively now. I know we're in the town hall here, and I know a little bit of the history behind it. The first time I came here, that's the building that caught my eye. It's a big old cool building. I can tell it was probably the most important building in town. And I think at some point came under disrepair, and some people were wanting to get rid of it, and others were fighting to save it. Obviously, it has been saved, and let us know kind of what's going on with it. I know the first floor has been fixed up, and there's some new things going to be happening. Yeah,
so Town Hall, historically speaking, has attracted a lot of emotions, whether it's for or against it. At one time, this was the roller rink, there was a theater, an opera house here, there's the city hall, the fire department. I mean, this building, a basketball court. This building has been the home to so many different uses and has been really a huge community asset. So when the building caught fire and ultimately was useless, it really brought into the question of we have no funds to really renovate this. Do we just tear it down and replace it? At one time they wanted to replace it with a double wide trailer. So this is I think it was 1863 this building was built, all brick. It's a beautiful building. And they wanted to tear it down and put a double wide trailer and, house the city office people there.
So what happened?
So we actually had a local group who came together to raise funding and push for those efforts to restore the town hall. So what we did in 2012, I think it was, they started, or 2015, they started renovations. And they did the first floor, so we now have the village offices back here, and we have the police department as well. Okay. So all of the city administrative people are in this building, and then now we're pushing to renovate the second floor. So what that will do is it'll bring back a lot of the same uses that were previously with the opera house, It'll be more of a multi-use entertainment space that will allow
Live
for
music.
live music.
Alright.
There's going to be an elevator, concession stand. So a lot of it's catered towards like a wedding venue, in a lot of respects as it relates to the changing rooms and just the offerings. But really, we're targeting more of the community use. So how can we bring the community to this building that really is a huge asset for us? I mean, this is our logo. This is our symbol for the village. So that's a project that we're pushing for as we go into 2023. It's about a $2.5 million project, which for us is quite huge.
Yeah. And a building, you were talking before, sometimes buildings need torn down and you can build it back with bricks that make it look halfway decent. A building like this, though, could never be replaced. The culture, I mean, this has too much history, the way it was built. So saving this, I wasn't here in 2012, but I think that was probably a good idea. Yeah.
It truly would be a devastating thing for the village to lose is the town hall. I mean, this just has so much history in it. As you look around the bottom floor, we have our council room, but even the history that's here with, we have a gentleman that grew up in Camden who was often given the credit for the name of the Chevrolet Corvette.
Oh.
We have Sherwood Anderson, the author, that's from Camden. So there's just so much history that's in Camden itself, and this would be just something that would never be able to be replaced.
Let's talk about a couple. I know you have a couple other projects on the horizon. You're trying to push over the finish line, hopefully. Or, let us know kind of where the two next biggest things outside the fixing up the town hall upstairs.
So to bring us back to the battle between keeping an old building and tearing it down, although we try to keep that history in the downtown, sometimes they do have to be torn down just because of the disrepair. So we actually have a project that's going in the downtown. It's a medical supply company. It's called MedShip. So what they focus on is wound care, so at-home wound care. So if you have a wound and you're at home, but you still need those medical supplies, they ship that to you. So they work with different doctors and hospitals, and fortunately, they're actually from Camden. So they have a warehouse in Florida. I think they have one in California now, but they're really rapidly growing. But they're from Camden, and that's where they want to make their headquarters. So what they're going to do is they're actually going to tear down 3 buildings that they already own and are in extreme disrepair, and they're going to replace it with a brand new, beautiful brick building that is going to match the character of the downtown. So that's another $2.5 million project. It'll bring between 30 and 50 jobs to the community. So anything that they ship will not be in Camden. This will be more of their headquarters, so their salespeople, anyone that just oversees the operations. So that's a huge project for us, not only because they're from Camden and they could go anywhere, but they decided to do it here. But also just because it's really a testament of the growth that we're experiencing. Coming out of 2022, that was one of the biggest years that we've ever had in terms of economic development and projects. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge one that we're going to start here soon, and we're excited for that.
I mean, it's super important. I mean, obviously they wanted to put it here because they're from here. That's, people have, your hometown puts a little place in your heart, or it should for a lot of people. But there's also, does it make business sense? How do you make sure they want to come here with their heart, but how did you make sure that it made business sense for them to do that?
And that's the thing. They fight that battle all the time. They have investors that are part of this company who are not from Camden. They're from New York or somewhere else in the United States, and that has always been something that we've I don't want to say fought, but we've always been pinned against. It's why would we locate in a small village of Camden that's 2,000 people in southeast or southwest rural Ohio when we could do it in a bigger metropolitan area. So they've always had that love for Camden, and fortunately, we've been able to help them along the way. So we are seeking out state funding that will be a pretty significant amount, as well as we've had a village contribution to help land the project here. So besides their love, I mean, they're supporting local sports teams. They're invested in the community, which is great, because when it comes to hometowns, that's what we need. We need those people that truly love the town to stay here, and that's how we grow. Especially in a small town like this, like you said earlier, 30 or 40 jobs in a town like this, that's a major thing. We're in a bigger town, it might not be as big of a deal.
Are there any other projects? I think the library maybe has something going on.
Yeah, so another project, this is another great community project. It's a community tech center. So what it's going to do is we're trying to attract the library. So what they'll do is they'll move half a block up and they will locate on the bottom floor of what's going to be the community tech center. So half of it's going to be the library where they're going to literally move their operations. And then the other half will be a tech center. So what we've really targeted is workforce development, and being in rural Ohio, we lack in broadband. So a lot of our students during COVID, they didn't have those Wi-Fi capabilities. So the school did have hotspots to offer. The library had hotspots to offer, but not enough of them were able to be passed around. So a lot of students could not complete their work, their homework, their school assignments. So what this will allow us to do is we're going to create a center in which it's a centralized spot. So it's just 2 blocks down from the primary elementary school, and then 2 miles away from the 2 or 5 miles away from the high school. And what this will do is it'll be a center for kids to complete their homework. It'll have collaboration space with work tables, and I think another huge thing that come out of this is we are working with some of the higher educational institutions. We're trying to partner with Edison State up in Eaton, as well as Wright State has shown interest in literally offering classes in the center itself. So the college credit plus classes where these students can't find, they can't get rides there. They quite frankly can hardly find space to offer these classes for students to be in high school and then still take college classes. So that way they have a jump start at their college time or their college, requirements. They're not even giving those opportunities out to people in this area, to the students in this area. So that will be a huge advantage.
That'd be a game changer for some of the kids in high school wanting to get a jump start, save some money on tuition, maybe even.
It will. And with that, we want to target not only the students, but also other community members that don't have the resources to, get their GED or any sort of job certification, where they can come to the center. They have the technology, they have a printer, whatever technology device they need. They have that there, so they can complete those workforce initiatives. So that'll be huge for us.
All right, I got a tough question for you. A lot of the towns, small towns like this, and even the city I'm from, Hamilton, a little bit bigger place. Here in the Rust Belt or whatever you want to call it in Ohio, they lost a lot of jobs in the 70s and 80s, 90s, and they were kind of on tough times. Some of them are kind of turning around, or some of them more so than others. Some are maybe already making it out on the other end as a different town. I mean, obviously the manufacturing jobs aren't all coming back. But where do you see, towns like Camden, even Hamilton, cities in Ohio, the small, mid-sized towns, where are they going to be in 10 years? Are things going to keep improving? Are people, going to keep believing and building things better?
Yeah, that's one thing that we oftentimes look at, especially on a strategic planning standpoint, because we're not a big city. We're not going to attract those warehouses. Anything that the bigger cities can land in terms of job creation and the stuff that's going to stay there. We don't really attract that sort of stuff. So what we really focus on is the quality of life. So 3 things that I usually focus on: live, play, work. Those are the 3 categories that really make it a home. So is our downtown, do we have those offerings? Do we have the bakery? Do we have the grocery store? Do we have the businesses that are needed?
Coffee shop. That's my favorite.
Yes, coffee shop. That's one of those things where we need to be able to create that atmosphere. So people want to, they might go out and travel to some of the bigger cities to work, but do they want to live there because we have a good school system, because our parks are, we have a great swing set and we have good offerings in the parks. That's really where we need to capitalize, is the quality of life, because we're not going to get those big projects, the Intels. We'll likely never get those. So the quality of life, making sure that this is a place that people want to live, is really where our focus is.
All right. What about you? This is your first real job in local government. I mean, outside of college, what do you want to do, with your life going forward? You want to keep moving up to bigger cities, or do you want to, stay in the smaller towns?
Yeah, so on a short term, I'm really just focused on getting through my master's degree. I just actually got another graduate level program for public financial management. So I'm really just trying to hone in on, some of my weaker areas, try to, improve those, but ultimately I need to get that exposure, that experience that, will allow me to scale my career. A smaller town is great, and it affords me a lot of opportunities that I might not get in a bigger city, but ultimately, when it comes to my professional life, I do want to grow. I do want to go to a city, a medium-sized city where, I can still have some of those bigger projects, but also I can still focus on my quality of life. It's the quality of life, that's the best thing about local government, is the impact you can make. You can literally take a city that has not a whole lot going for it. The buildings are, blighted, they're disrepair. You don't even want to look at them, to something that, has all these shops, has all these businesses that are, entrepreneurs that, there's the small mom and pops that allow for that atmosphere to, really call it at home. I just think that the impact is something that really is attractive in local government.
It's something you can point to that you helped with and actually seen it change, even if it's behind the scenes and your name's not on the business. Just you made a difference.
Yeah, that's the great thing about what I do. Economic development is it's tangible. You can see it. Some of the other departments in local government, like the water and wastewater, when it's underground, you can't ever see that stuff.
Yeah.
And although that's essential for operations, it's essential for the city to keep that stuff going. I get to do the fun stuff. I get to see the numbers. I get to I get to replace a building that is ugly, and now it's it's booming. It's really a quite interesting job.
Well, I know you're doing a lot of hard work here in Camden, and I'll be watching your career as you grow. I really thank you for sitting down and talking to me, letting us learn more about Camden and what you're doing here, and you personally. Still don't have a name for this thing. It's the second episode. You got any ideas?
I think I like the
hometown stories around town.
I like the hometown stories. It's a little catchy. I think the hometown stories.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll call that a working title.
There we go.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.